Hello and welcome to the final episode of My Life in Rugby Series 2 as we continue our week-long previews to 2024 Guinness Women's Six Nations Championship with another marquee interview. Joining me today is a current Ireland international who is in the midst of preparing for the upcoming championship. Taking us behind the curtain, we have a Ballinasloe-born flyer of Connacht and Blackrock College fame in Ireland fullback Meabh Deely. So welcome to the show, Maeve.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
It's always good to have you on, and I'll throw it out there first of all. Myself and Maeve know each other since school, so there is that side of things. It's a familiar setting. I didn't just pluck players at random or anything like that. But Maeve, I have to start with the Six Nations because it is around the corner, like on a personal level, but also on a collective level. There must be an air of excitement starting to kick in around now.
Yeah, like there's a growing excitement. I think, especially like with a new year and like a new look on it all, a new head coach, I suppose it's quite fresh and on a personal level, like I'm really excited. Like I feel a bit more confident going into this Six Nations. I have built a lot more experience compared to last year. And then collectively I feel like our prep is going really well. And I think in a way it's kind of we don't know, it's kind of a bit of an unknown there because we've got a lot of new things surfacing, like a new head coach, a new training identity and stuff like that. So I think it's going to be really special this year and I'm really excited about it.
Hopefully it is, and I suppose we're kind of in the period now where you start looking towards a World Cup as well. Is that even being mentioned as Scott has come in as new head coach? Is that where the end goal is?
Yeah, like that has been, I suppose that's our main goal of the Six Nations, is to qualify for the World Cup in 2025. And it's a tough feat, with the competition in the Six Nations, but I think if we can go after it and be competitive and like fire some shots, as Scott loves talking about, we can really reach that goal. It's a tough goal to set, but I think at the end of the day, that's what we're after.
Absolutely. I like to move these things in chronological order as much as I can. And like personally, I had a first-hand viewpoint of your progression through the ranks with Ballinasloe and with Connacht and onto AIL. And I just want to start there with Ballinasloe because
Yeah.
just how and when did you get into rugby? And do you want to just explain to people the early days of women's rugby in Ballinasloe? Because it wasn't really there until you were in your teens.
Yeah, like I think I was on the first ever Ballinasloe team, so I was maybe 12 or 13. And Stephen Riley and Declan Murphy were the first two that set it up, and they both had daughters my age, like Aveen and Ashling, and they were sent on a little recruitment mission to get everyone into down to the rugby club to do it. And we were all in first year at the time, so we'd obviously all come from different schools into the same school. And so they brought the whole football team, the whole camogie team down, and we just played. And like I just played to enjoy it. Like I didn't come from a rugby like background. My dad and my mom are very into like GA. Like my dad would have brought me to the pub to watch the rugby games when I was younger, but that was as far as I went. Um, so then we started there, and I actually don't really fully remember my first 2 years because I think I just played and I had no clue what was going on. Like I didn't, none of us really knew the rules, but we were all really good because we could just run with the ball. And then yeah, we started out there and like I'm really grateful for that. I don't think like there's to see it still going on the way it is now 11 years later is actually really special to know that like it was a big crew of us that started there and like where we are today is really like it's great like to see like me, Baven and Avian still playing and up in the Irish setup.
Yeah, I was going to get onto that anyway because like yourself, Avon Riley, who you mentioned, and Bevan Parsons, who probably needs no introduction, you're all on that early underage teams. I know. I think Avon and Bevan both played community games in the fall of the done the rounds before.
Yeah.
Like there must be a surreal element to be like coming through the ranks with not only like Avon, who would have been the same year as yourself, but Bevan as well, and to have literally played club rugby. I know you played a bit of schools rugby, the whole
Yeah.
way up, right up to international level.
Yeah, I feel like we kind of took it for granted until like recently we were in Dubai and it'd been the first time we'd played together in 4 years maybe, like all on the same pitch. Even though we'd been like on each other's paths, like different, like we'd been in sevens, been in 15s. Some of us had injuries, some of us had selection issues. Like we were still always around, like, but we hadn't actually played together until WXV in Dubai there in October. And I think we kind of were like, oh my God, like this is actually a bit surreal. Like we've actually come on this journey together. And I think when you look back, it's a bit crazy. Like, and we look around at all the other girls that like all come from kind of singular clubs, and we're like, there's three of us in this squad, like, so it is crazy, and I think it's made me more like a better player as well. Like growing up with them, like having that competitiveness, and like Baven and Avian are both such determined athletes. Like, it really pushes me along as well to be a better player, and like stay up there at a high performance level. So I think it's great. Like I love them both, and I'm so glad I still get to play with them.
No, it's the pride of the town as well. And like I'd be doing the lads a disservice if I did mention, Colin Riley, Matthew Devine, John Devine, Bushy McCormick, Shane Jennings, they've all played Ireland under 20s in recent years. There's
Yeah, there's
been
a good few of us.
yeah, and there's a scattering of under 18 internationals, under 18 provincial players in recent years. I know Garbley won senior cups when we were still in school. Like it's great to see. There is a bit of a golden generation element to it, but just on that and coming through, like you would have played a good few sports coming up, and I'm sure the girls did as well, and many of your teammates. When was it that it kind of came clear to you that you might pursue rugby, or was that literally a last minute decision in some way?
In some ways, it kind of just happened for me, but also like I played under 18s Connacht, and then from there I got picked for the under 18 sevens, the Irish setup. I think when that happened for me, it was like, wow, there's a lot of opportunity in this sport for girls. Like it's, I played GA growing up and I loved it and I still love it. Like, but I'd like the opportunities seemed a lot more like endless within rugby, and it was definitely an environment where you could really be yourself, and there was kind of a place for someone. Like it doesn't matter what size you are or what you were, whether you're fast or slow, or you had a place on the pitch, and I really liked that about rugby. So I think, yeah, when I got into that under 18s Irish setup, that was when I kind of stopped the GA. I was about 17 or 18 at that time. And I just kind of continued with it. It just kept happening for itself. Once I was in that setup, I kind of stayed there. So that was it, I suppose.
Yeah, and I suppose there's probably a lure as well to sevens because I know like I spoke about this with Anna Kaplan on Monday's show, and like the idea of playing sevens, just even if that's all you do, I know it's international caps, is probably enticing because there's the element of going abroad and seeing these countries. Like you see, the last tournament was LA, there was Vancouver,
Yeah.
there's a series in Dubai, there's Perth, where of course the women had great glory at the turn of last year. Is seven something that is kind of within camp? That's something that's just enjoyed, and because like obviously they're chasing an Olympic dream, and that's obviously important, but
Yeah.
it is probably something that's a bit of a selling point for people when they're teenagers and that.
Yeah. Like when I was growing up, there was no under 18s, like 15 aside Irish setup. So that was the only kind of Irish setup was the sevens. And I was a back and I was fast. So I was pulled into it quite quick. Um, and then I was pulled into the senior setup also when I was around 19 or 20. And it is a great sport now. I can't say I wasn't very good at it, to be honest. I really didn't love playing it, but now that I'm kind of established in the 15 setup, like we train alongside them a lot of the time. And they're always up in the high performance center in Abbottstown with us. So I know a lot of the girls quite well, and I think they're amazing. Like, and what they're chasing is brilliant, and their program is very well established. Like, it's over 10 years old at this point, the sevens program. Um, it is appealing, but I think it's also great that the IRFU have set up 15 asides under 18s teams and under 20s, because not every girl is suited to sevens, and it is a certain type of player that suits that game because it's a tough game. Like it's a tough game. Um, so it's really nice to see that like there's setups for girls coming through that wouldn't suit that game, and they can actually continue to play and develop through their teens and into their early like young adulthood. It's I think it's great, and it's something that I didn't have growing up, but I was also very lucky that I could play sevens.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I know maybe I'm mistaken, but I'm pretty sure Neve Briggs is the new under 20 coach, and
Yeah,
she
yeah,
would
she
have
is.
worked with yourselves. Like, and I know she had great success at AIL level. Like, Neve Briggs her coaching pedigree is actually phenomenal as well as her playing
Yeah.
pedigree. But there's probably a joined up thinking then on that regard, the fact that someone who was in the senior setup has gone to under 20s, and that probably helps as well when you're only 23, 24, but there's also younger players coming through underneath your age group as well. It probably helps that it's more joined up now.
Yeah, definitely. Like they'll like with Briggsy going into the under 20 setup, I feel like there'll be an even more seamless transition from under 20s into senior. Because it is a big jump. Like I went from under 18 straight into senior, and I was like, oh my God, like this is insane. But to have that like coach there that has seen the senior setup and can bring all of that kind of the training identity and like what we're going after and bring that into the 20s and like show the girls what Scott is looking for essentially, I think will be really important. And it's obviously it's going to pay off, it's in the years to come, like this, all these new teams, which is great to see.
It's absolutely it's a positive because it is something that we've spoken about this week and with Anna and with yourself and in other podcasts. Like the pathways have to be right as well. And
Yeah,
I
exactly.
understand like yourself, Dave and Avian, are a bit of an anomaly in the fact that you were the first women's team in a club like Ballinasloe, but at the same time, that is breaking down barriers that can help find maybe the next Bevan Parsons, for example, who is
Yeah,
known across the country in many ways. But just
I know
you
she's
met
insane.
you mentioned there about the step up, which under 18 to senior, I'd imagine would be quite stark. But just from your time going from underage ranks to under 16, under 18 with Connacht and so on. Even just going from club to province, did you find there is that big step up because it's probably not as it's not as graduated, say, as in the men's game where there's under 18s, 19s, 20s.
Yeah, yeah. I remember I played under 18s with Ballinasloe and then with Connacht, and then my first year on or at senior Connacht was 2019, and I was still 18 at the time. And I remember like me and Avine and Baven all played that year, and we were so young. And looking back, I'm like, geez, we were very young to be playing that, but it was a big kind of system shock, I think, at the time. But we actually took it very well. I remember I was named on the bench for the first game against, I think it was it Leinster, and I was like, grand, I'm on the bench, like, I'll be grand. I think Baven and Avon were both starting. And then I got a call from Nicole Fowley, like, the night before. 'Cause Nicole Fowley was the starting 10. And she's like, I'm after, like, she got after getting injured anyway on the Thursday evening. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to have to start this game. And I found out the day before the game. And I was starting at a 10, which was a different ball game altogether. Like, I played 10 all underage, but once I got to senior, it was just a new thing. Like, there was new systems, there was a bigger intensity. And I played that first game. And I remember Nicola Friday was my captain. I was getting hit late all day long. And I don't think it really phased me, to be honest, because I was like, I just kind of got up and got on with it. But Nicola was like telling the ref all day, like, oh, she's getting hit late. And I was like, Jesus, this is, I think I took it all in my stride, but I was also quite nervous. But Nicole was brilliant to me at the time. And she's actually back in the Irish squad now the last year, which is great. Like, but that was the biggest step up I found now. And then I went to club after that up in Blackrock, and that was all. There's a high standard up there too with all the internationals that play. There's a that was where I first like saw the likes of Hannah O'Connor, who is so experienced and played with those kind of girls. So yeah, it's weird the way it works, but I think when I think about what was my biggest step up, it was definitely being a little 18-year-old going into that senior Connacht squad, and the likes of like Alison Miller and Adele McMahon, who's now the Irish captain, and Nicola Friday, who's an ex-Irish captain, all around me being like asking me what they want or asking me what I wanted at 10. And I was like, oh my God, this is insane.
It's quite a big step up when, as you said, playing 10. Like I've spoken about it on different podcasts covering, matches in particular, and like it's a very different ballpark to playing 15 where you play a
Yeah.
lot and like as you say, I suppose the other side of it is you probably have a comfort blanket in some ways, the fact that, Nicola Friday and McMahon are just known leaders and everyone raves about them as leaders. So there's probably that as a help. But you did mention Blackrock. I was going to talk about it. You're a year and a half nearly as AIL champions somehow
Yeah.
because there's been no AIL final as of yet. It's
Yeah.
still going on, but I want to talk about that as well because you went to college in Dublin, played for Blackrock, a seriously talented Blackrock team that won it last year. How do you find the AIL just in general and stepping up into that Blackrock team full of stars?
Yeah. Those first 2 years I was in Dublin and in college, and I was with Sevens at the time for some of it. Playing with Blackrock definitely brought my game along. I think it was one of my first, like after the senior interpros I played, it was my first time playing like senior again with a squad so experienced. And that was kind of when I moved into the back three properly. Ben Martin was our coach at the time. I think he's over in Exeter now with the women over there, or as a director of rugby over there. And he was keen on getting me in the back three. And I was like, oh God, I don't know. Like, I'd only played there a handful of times really. And he was like, no, no, your speed is great. And I was like, grand. But he put me on the wing now, which I did. I loved and I hated it. It was kind of hard when you're new to the wing, like, and how to get on the ball more compared to when I was at 10 all the time. Um, and then that's where I kind of went into the back three, and sure, that's where I ended up getting my first cap in at Irish senior level there. So turns out it probably was a good move, to be honest.
I mean, if he's doing well at Exeter of all clubs, he must know a thing or two as well because they're flying at the moment.
Yeah,
And just on that, then like you go on, you make that step up towards international, in 20. 22. Yeah, 2022. I have here in my notes.
Yeah.
Like, does the AIL really help? Because it's something we talked about with Anna about like when she was playing, it was uber competitive with some of the best players to ever play women's rugby in Ireland. There's been talk about it, about whether it's as strong as it could be. Do you think it is very strong and a very helpful tool to stepping up to Six Nations level, which is the highest caliber?
Yeah, I think when I was when we played last year was quite a competitive year. Um, we only like tipped Bows at the post in the semi-finals by 5 points, and then the game against Railway was tough. This year it's obviously the AIL has been hit hard by WXV and Celtic Challenge, whereas the years before those things never really happened. So players were playing more in it from international level. So it's a difficult question really to answer because I've great love for the AIL. Like it really brought me along. Um, and then now there's this Celtic Challenge that's coming in, trying to essentially bridge that gap in the provinces. Like there's a lot of girls in Dublin playing rugby that are international, and it's kind of you can see where it's going in terms of like trying to get the four provinces up to a standard that um can compete with other teams around, like in Scotland, England, and Wales. So I think it's a work in progress. Like I've a lot of love for the IL, and personally I've found it great as a step up into international level because I was playing with 10, 12 odd internationals every week, so I found it great. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes now. I think it's still a great competition for girls that are looking to let themselves be seen by Irish coaches and stuff like that. Hannah O'Connor's done a lot of scouting this season in Blackrock because we've lost a lot of players to WXV and Celtic Challenge. So there's a whole UCD crew down there now, and they're young and they're great. Like, so it's great to see that young blood coming through and getting the game time and showing up every week for us.
Absolutely. And I'll hold my hand up. I've been critical of the treatment of AIL, both men's and women's, and how it affects selection in the women's game in particular, and so on. And if there is a push from players to say, we enjoy AIL, that's at least that's something because like
Yeah.
WXV3 that you were in last year, WXV, the main entity as it is, if you're going to be playing that, you'd probably want to be able to play AIL as well. You probably don't want to not play AIL until say December when there's a gap in the calendar, for instance.
Yeah, like that's when we got to play this year. I got to play a few games there at Blackrock. Um, but I suppose like yeah, I had Celtic Challenge and now I'm going to Six Nations, but I always make myself known in the club and a lot of the Irish girls would as well. I always go down there and do my gyms whenever I have remote gyms or like stick around for the sessions. I was even at their Galwegians game there at the weekend and I took the backs in the warm up and I was like, oh God, I've never done this before. But because one of our coaches couldn't travel to Galway, but it's nice to still go down there. Like it always you're always welcome. Like it's your home. Like I was only 19 or 20 when I went in there, like 4 years or 3 or 4 years ago. So it's nice to like always be welcome back at your like one of the clubs that did essentially create me into the player I am today. So I really hope it does stay developing and like it becomes a league and gets through this transition of like Celtic Challenge, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And the AIL final, both the AIL finals we played in the same day in the Aviva this year. So there's probably
Yeah,
even
that's
that
great.
extra push as well to kind of like to really double down. Not to say that teams weren't going for it until the month of February or whatever, but that kind of prize being there, the chance to play in the Aviva in a final. Donnybrook is great, but it's the Aviva, and there's probably great excitement then as well within the actual club setups that they could get this opportunity.
Yeah, I know. I'm almost jealous. Like they get to play in the Aviva. Um, I was talking. A lot of the Bows girls obviously play with the Clovers, and they're absolutely buzzing. They're top of the table, so they're looking towards a final. So I think there's a lot of excitement down there with the Limerick girls to get to come up here and hopefully play that final. Um, but yeah, I think it's great. Like it's great to see. Like I know the men's have been played there the last few years, so I'll definitely be at it now if I'm not playing.
Well, hope that I can't say that I'll definitely root for Bowls ahead of say Blackrock or Railway or whoever's in it. But I did go to college in UL, and
I
it's a good
know
UL Bowls team and all that.
it is
And
a great team this year now.
yeah, so I wouldn't mind seeing them do well. You mentioned the Clovers there in the Celtic Challenge. It's only a few weeks removed from when we speak. It's only just finished up. The Clovers team, for anyone who didn't know, that was mainly Connacht and Munster players predominantly. The Wolfhounds was mainly Leinster and Ulster, and they won the tournament out convincingly in the end, which is fair play to them for that. Just to as an experience of playing different teams, so Welsh teams and Scottish teams, what was that like? Just first of all,
I really enjoyed it. Like it was great. It was a new kind of, it was quite new. It was a prototype in a way, but I think it's worked well. Obviously there's always room for improvement everywhere, but it was definitely like a step up from other competitions in a way. And Scott and the RFU coaches were very involved in the two teams in kind of setting up like how we were going to train and how we were going to play. So then it would be a more seamless transition for girls coming from that into a Six Nations. So you're kind of used to the systems a bit more. And I think that was really important. And also for game time, like was girls that like probably wouldn't have got the most game time in Dubai who got 60 to 80 minutes every week week out in Celtic Challenge who like that'll really hold them for like the Six Nations, I think. And for me, like I played a lot of games at 10 and 15, so it was great to like get a look in at both and like use my skills at both. So on a personal level, like I did really enjoy it, like, and I think it's been great for the women's game. And next year, hopefully it'll go ahead again and we can play the teams again. And even seeing the other Celtic countries like Scotland, like you saw Edinburgh, they put a lot of work into that, and like Glasgow Warriors, and they're the first ever women's teams, set up in both cities. So like that's great to see as well. And same down the Welsh. So hopefully it can evolve into a bigger tournament and more competitive as well. So I'm really looking forward to like the future of that tournament.
Yeah, there is a sense of excitement coming after, especially, and there's been question marks about it with the selection, everything. But seeing as you said that Scott Beamont has been involved, that probably I can't think of the word now, but that probably strengthens the selection calls because there was questions about, they've gone very heavy on experience, but if he's involved, then he's basically has eyes on the ground with those squads. So that's probably a good thing that, I think the likes of Linda Jew gang played every game for the Wolfhounds, for example. It's probably a good thing in that regard. But then as a build up to the Six Nations, is that where that kind of comes in that essentially, yeah, you're playing for a different entity, but it's essentially focusing on the Six Nations coming up and trying to improve and trying to hit form as well.
Yeah, like I suppose on a wider focus, it's building the provinces up. And like, there's been girls from Connacht and Munster that have really come through the ranks and really showed themselves in Celtic Challenge. And same with Leinster and Ulster. But yeah, I suppose the short term goal was to like prep people for that Six Nations. And then I say the longer term goal is to really build depth in the provinces. Hopefully it'll go ahead next year and like the depth in the provinces will build more, and then eventually maybe it'll be a 14 tournament or a four Irish team tournament. But yeah, it has. I suppose, yeah, like the short term goal is to like really prime girls for this Six Nations coming and like getting minutes in, so you're not going from, I suppose, having last played in Dubai at that level and then having nothing else really besides club like until Six Nations. So I think it's been great like for that.
No, it can only be a good thing because basically everyone that we've had on this from Anna Kaplis to Sean Klein to Johnny Holland to Alex McHenry, they all talk about the importance of minutes and getting minutes under your
Mm.
belt. So for you to have these additional tournaments, WXV, Celtic Challenge, like okay, there's a small bit of taken away from your L minutes, but
Yeah.
it's probably important that you are getting more improved minutes under your belt over the course of the entire season and not just in a 6 week block or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And it is taking away from Ariel, which is difficult. Like I would have loved to have played a few more games with Blackrock as well. But it does come down to like what it's wanted from the IRFU really on what you want to play. And the Celtic Challenge did play similar systems to the national squad, I suppose, and that was where you get your practice in at best, I suppose. But yeah, like hopefully they'll figure out the calendar a bit better in time to come, and there will be more depth in the clubs that they can hold out this Celtic Challenge, and get the support that they need to be able to, build that depth.
Yeah, definitely. I was going to move on to the Six Nations, but I almost forgot a part of, you rising through the ranks and getting your Ireland caps, as I said, back in 2022. That was on a tour of Japan, which, if anyone remembers, I think, no disrespect to you, most famous part of it was the TG Carr stream cut out halfway through one of the matches, and everyone was
You
like,
know,
what's going on? And relying on Twitter, like kind of like the old
oh,
days.
we
But
always say that was like the best. It cut out the first 15 minutes where we'd
yeah,
conceded two tries. So I remember behind the post and Eva Dalton was like, "Oh my God, what are we-" like they were both our first caps." And she was like, "Maeve, when we were behind the post that time, I thought we were going to get hammered." And then we looked at it after the game, and the stream hadn't even got the two tries. So we were like, "Thank God," because when the stream started, then we just started scoring loads of tries. So maybe it was a bit of a blessing in disguise.
definitely. I remember watching it, and obviously not the first 15 minutes because that would have been revolutionary. But I remember watching that game and just sitting down to watch it. And you're like, oh no, what's going on here? And then you do see it. And what people may not know is you scored on your debut over in that game in Japan. We might get onto that in a second, but the days and weeks heading into that, the call up, what was that like on a personal level?
You know what? That summer was actually like it was summer 2022. I'd actually had a really rough few weeks. I just got released from the sevens program in July, and then 2 days later, I got told I wasn't going to Japan. I wasn't selected for Japan. So all in the same week, I got dropped from sevens and dropped from 15s, and I was like completely contemplating my whole rugby career. Like I was only 21. Like to be honest, I was so young. I don't know. I was probably being a bit dramatic, but I remember going home to my mom and being like, I don't know what I want to do. Like I haven't got picked for Japan, and I haven't. They don't want me in sevens anymore. Um, and she actually gave me great advice. You know what a mom is like now. She was like, I was so gutted and I was so upset. And she was like, and the head coach at the time had still invited me to train in the few weeks pre-Japan. And I was like, she was like, I think, and the first training was like the 2 days after the selection had come out. And I was like, I really don't want to go. And she was like, I think you should go, and I think you'd regret it if you don't go. And I was like, I was really like emotionally distraught, like about the whole situation, because it just, the two things that hit me in the same week, and it just was not great. Um, and she was like, no, I think you should go up because it was an evening training. And I was like, right, I'll go, I'll do it. And if I absolutely hate it, I won't go back for the other sessions. So I went up anyway and I did it. And I look back and I'm like, how did I get through that? Because I was crying the whole week about it. Like, and I just went up there, put on a brave face and just trained. And then I stayed training for the next like 2 weeks. And I was just like, I have nothing to lose here. Like my mom was like, you know, you're good enough. Like you are good enough to go on this tour. Like you are so good, like. And I was like, I wasn't really believing her, but then I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go and just do my best. And I had nothing to lose. Like I just trained. Like all the other girls were selected, like they had something to lose, like they had to prove him right that they got picked, like. But I was just there training. And then they had like one full week like of full-time training before they headed to Japan. And I remember going into the head coach and being like, oh, do you want me in for the week, or like is that me done now? And he was like, look, can I give you a call in the morning? And I was like, yeah, grand. And then I was sitting in a coffee shop and he calls me and he's like, we have an injury and you've trained so well, I would love to bring you to Japan with us. And I was like, that's great. So then after that, it just went on an upward spiral. Obviously went to Japan, really enjoyed the whole atmosphere. It was really, I think it was a successful tour overall, really. I know we lost one of the games, but I think for youth and experience, it was great. But I ended up then starting both games and scoring a try in the first game. So I don't think it could have gone any better, really. Um, but yeah, it was a tough summer leading up to that. And I think once I went to Japan, things started turning for me then. And I got the 15s contracts began then after Japan. And I was brought into that program. And that's where I've been ever since. So sometimes when it's tough, you just got to keep going and you'll get your reward eventually. But I think, yeah, it was a tough few weeks. But once I got picked and I was on the plane, sure, it was great.
Real sliding doors moment, like
Yeah.
if there ever was one in that regard. And like just the fact that you went over to Japan and played this tour, coming off the back of, COVID games to a degree, obviously not that Six Nations, but in general, in the years prior, like as a squad, were you buzzing with excitement heading into like this opportunity to tour Japan?
Yeah, like it was my first involvement with the 15 squad, like ever. Um, and I hadn't really played as much 15s in the last year because I'd been in the sevens program. Like I played a few Blackrock games towards the end of the season. Like played all the last few games, which was great. But like it was quite a fun atmosphere because I think going on tour is just so different because you're like going to these different countries, and it does bring a different vibe. But it was a great I remember we got to go to Disneyland. I'd never been to Disneyland before. It was a great experience. But I think after we came back from that, it was definitely like felt like there was like a bit of a progression, and like that was the first ever summer tour that the Irish women's rugby team had done. Um, and it's obviously some things haven't been great and some things have been great, but yeah, I really enjoyed that tour, and I think I'm very lucky that I can say that my first cap was such a delightful experience because not everyone gets to experience a first cap like that.
Definitely. And I know there's potential chances to tour down the line, with the Lions coming up, there'll be more summer series. There's WXV, which I believe is going back to Dubai next year. I could be wrong. I could have missed. Oh no, it's going somewhere else actually. It's being
I
moved out
think
of Dubai,
three
I
is
think.
WXV three is in Dubai and then two is in South Africa. and
That's
one is
yeah,
in Canada. Yeah,
that could be it. All right, and hopefully being WXV 1 or 2 this time around. I
yeah,
know they've changed the qualification, but the chance to have these things again is, I think it's sometimes something we just kind of take for granted in a lot of ways. But moving on from there, then you went into the 2023 Six Nations, and it was ultimately a bitter disappointment. There's no other way of putting it, like one wooden spoon finish. But is there any is there any sense there could have been a potential necessary evil in the fact that, okay, you reevaluate and then you go into the autumn time then, which we'll touch on in a few minutes, WXV, flying it? Like, is there a
yeah.
chance that it was kind of hitting the low road first of all that kind of needs to be done?
I don't know really. Like I think that there's been a lot of acknowledgement of like that was a disappointing tournament for us, and I think the months following, like summer and the months between Six Nations and WXB last year, was really like we worked towards like building our culture and creating a better environment like to enjoy, and like acknowledging that that tournament was a very difficult time for a lot of us, um and but we got through it, and I think we were like, if we can't acknowledge it and then leave it in the past and move on, then we're never going to move on from it. And the RFU did a lot of work with the players and with just everyone really to kind of pinpoint what went wrong, and where we can go from here and how we can create a team that is special and people want to be part of. And like that included a lot of honest conversations and a lot of working through, things that had happened. And like I think it really was really worth it in the end. Like going to that WXV tournament, we'd worked through a lot as a team, and we'd built a great environment, and we'd built like something that I think we can all be proud of now. And that was really important. And that was pushed by everyone, the players and the RFU and all the staff and everyone in the whole group to create that. And going to Dubai, I think, proved that we were on this journey and we've started it now, and like building that environment and bringing it into Six Nations is really important for us. So it was difficult, but I think at the same time, if we constantly keep looking back on it, I suppose we'll never really move on. And I think we all know we're in a different place than we were last year. A lot different. The year has brought a lot of good for us, and like WXV winning WXV 3 has been really important for, I think, the team's whole confidence after that Six Nations.
Absolutely. I was going to mention that anyway, but it does make sense that it would. Do you think
Yeah.
then, just in that overall picture, the 2023 as a whole, and maybe 2023 is a year that we'll end up trying to forget in Irish rugby circles in general, but do you think that it kind of helps you gel together a small bit? The fact that you had to tough it out in some regard, that you kind of alluded to, that, just kind of put the arm over the person beside you and just head down, and then, obviously try and bounce back, which you did.
Yeah, like that last year's Six Nations was a lot of girls, including myself, like our first ever Six Nations tournament, or our first time for a few girls being involved in a Six Nations wider squad, etc. So this year going into it, like a lot more, we've all experienced that, and it's kind of, I suppose it does, going through that like toughness has really toughed us up and built character in a way. And this year there's a lot more girls that have experienced the Six Nations, and um have been there before, and gone to WXV 3 too. So the experience has built in the last year, which is great. So yeah, hopefully we can just build on it now and keep going through this Six Nations.
Hopefully that is the case, and but we might just move on to the Six Nations now, and
Yeah.
it's coming up. It's just a few weeks away as we record, just a couple of days away as this goes out. But you start with probably an unenviable task of taking on France away from home. Just in the overall scheme of things, like, how much are you trying to build on the success of last October coming into this tournament and try and keep the feel good factor and the vibes going?
Yeah, I suppose that's the ultimate goal, like really. Um, we're continuing to develop our own training identity and where we want to perform and what we want to perform. And a big part of our training identity is firing shots and like and being competitive and like getting to that stage where we are a competitive team in the Six Nations. And we've done a lot of work like mentally and physically on that in the last few months. And I think having that consistency with Scott being there with in Dubai, and like he's been involved in the centralized program and the Celtic Challenge and now Six Nations has been really important too. So I think we're in a really good place, like to go out there. Obviously, France away is a tough feat for any team really. Like they bring in big crowds. I've been at a France Ireland game in Toulouse before, and they get the band out and everything. So it is a great atmosphere. So I suppose you just got to go out there and, even though it's a French atmosphere, you got to try and enjoy it, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. And the atmosphere is something that gets talked about a lot because, okay, last year things weren't going as well. It's hard to get the crowd going, and that's fair enough. But the moving around of games, just again, kind of personal, but also collective mindset. Do you enjoy that? The fact that you get to play in Dublin, you get to play in Musgrave Park in Cork, or Virgin Media Park, I should call it, and you get to play in Ravenhill. Is that something you kind of enjoy and try and embrace?
Yeah, I think it's great to bring rugby around the country, like, and especially now while it's growing and developing as a game. So to like bring it to the three of the four provinces is great, and hopefully once the sports ground does up its stadium, we'll get there soon as well. I think that's the plan. So that'll be great to play back in Galway at some stage in the future. But yeah, I think the whole team really agrees that it's a good idea to help build the women's game and bring it to around the provinces, so girls all over the country can have access to us.
Yeah, definitely. And again, hopefully you do get those good crowds. I know one of the games is believed to be selling well. It's probably the one in Cork. If it's something like the under 20s, the one in Cork is just going to be
Yeah,
unbelievable turnout and an unbelievable atmosphere. That's against Italy, if I remember correctly. I can't fully remember. I don't have it in front of me, but you have also another unenviable task of taking on England in Twickenham, which
yeah,
it's going to be a great experience, absolutely. But it's a scary English team that I certainly would not like to play in ever. Like they're an unbelievable side. Do
I
you
know.
kind
Like,
of Are you excited for the Twickenham factor as much as Anthem there and to play in one of rugby's hallowed grounds?
yeah, it is crazy. Like we're playing there. I think it is amazing. Like my parents were shocked when they saw that. They were like Twickenham, and I was like, Jesus, yeah, it is going to be tough, and it is a little bit scary, I suppose. But I think it's also exciting. Like it's Twickenham. It's one of the world's oldest stages in rugby, and they are a great English team. Like they're arguably the best in the world, and they're coming off the back of WXV one success. So I'm looking forward to it. I think it's gonna be fun, and I think we as a group are much more gelled and ready for that kind of environment than we would have been before. So yeah, it'll be great now. Scott's old team now we're going up against.
Hopefully he's a couple of inside tricks that'll prove fruitful as well because he was highly regarded when the move was announced to go to Ireland. He's highly regarded by a lot of ex English players and legends of the game. So, hopefully that's a good sign. You do have a new coaching staff in there, which I know WXV took place last October or November, but unfortunately it was outside the public eye. So do you want to just touch on them really quickly before we move off? Because Scott's in there. I know Larissa Muldoon is in there in some capacity, who many will remember.
Yeah.
How are they kind of finding their feet and how's the rapport with them? Is it kind of a project rebuild or how does that work?
Yeah, I suppose it's a project rebuild. Like Scott's come from, like, he's spent I think maybe 8 or 10 years in with the Red Roses in England, like building that program. So he's seen it all really, I suppose, and he's bringing that wealth and experience to us to try build or create something, similar in Ireland to like they have such a competitive league in the Prem over there that some of our girls play in. And I think it goes to show what can happen if people invest in the women's game. So yeah, he's come over with a plan, he's come over with an agenda. So and he's great, like he's a fantastic coach. And he's really enforced his beliefs onto us now. So I think we've built a lot of trust in him as well over the last few months. And he's a backs coach, which is great for me. So oh yeah, he's been great. And Larissa's been in as well as she's been in as a bit of a development coach as well with World Rugby are sponsoring it. So she's great. Like she's based in Connacht now with the women's national talent squad as well. So that's great for Connacht. But yeah, like it's been great. We've a new defense coach now for Six Nations as well. Declan's in, and that's been brilliant as well. Like, just always more to learn about. You think you know it all, and then someone else comes in and gives you their perspective, and it's great. So yeah, it has been, I suppose, a project regeneration. But we all have a lot of faith in it, so I'm looking forward to it.
Very important. I spoke to a few people about kind of some of the coaching staff as well with the Ireland under 20s, which are playing tonight as we record actually, but and about yourselves. And there is an awful lot of buy-in about some of these coaches, which is always a good sign. But just to leave it off, like Six Nations starts this week as it goes out, but a few weeks away for ourselves.
Yeah,
Like the excitement is there, huge chance to rewrite a few wrongs, I suppose, of last year.
yeah.
Do you feel like you're in a good place now as countdown to kickoff comes in?
Yeah, I do feel like we are, hopefully we can bring a few people now along on our journey in the next few years and like build that atmosphere in Ireland for the women's game. And, hopefully we can see bigger crowds in the RDS, Musgrave and King and Ravenhill as well. Um, and I'm really looking forward to it. And I think the whole group is really excited. And I hope we can show the Irish public like what we've built in the last few years. Because, WXV3, as you said, wasn't really at the forefront of the public media as compared to what Six Nations will be. Um, so I'm really hoping that like people come along with us on this journey. I think it's going to be really exciting.
Hopefully they do. And there's a World Cup in England of all places next year.
I know,
So
yeah,
if there's ever a time, and I'm not putting you under pressure, but if there is a time to gather momentum, like a World Cup in England is probably going to feel like as much of a home World Cup as for
exactly. It's
ye
so
as
accessible.
anyone. Yeah,
Yeah,
if you providing qualification and all that through Six Nations or WXV. So best luck with the upcoming Six Nations. Hopefully you do rock it, and as you said, hopefully we get a game and go as well sometime soon because
yeah, exactly.
there's too strong of a Connacht contingent in the squad to not have a game and go coming up.
Exactly. I completely agree now. Hopefully we'll be pushing that soon.
Yeah, definitely. We definitely will. But Dave, that's all we have time for tonight. So thank you very much for joining me and coming on. As yeah, and best of luck for the Six Nations. I'm sure everyone listening at home will be sending on their best wishes for the Six Nations, and hopefully you do us proud. And always good to get someone who's in the midst of it as well in camp. It's like
Yeah.
doing the reps every day to kind of give their thoughts on things. And thanks home to everyone for listening as well. It's been an incredibly rewarding series with World Cup winners, coaches, fan favorites at Munster, commentators, international players, and so on. So thanks very much to everyone for listening and for new listeners as well. Thanks for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow evening with the championship preview with Chrissy, Aoife, Leslie, and Patricia. Stay tuned for that. But again, thanks home to Meabh and to everyone at home for listening. If you'd like to see you here, please do subscribe, leave a review. It all makes a difference. But for now, and until next time, take it easy.